Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash. And this episode is not really a ratings or a list of our favourites, but what we like and dislike in heroes. As always, like, subscribe, ring the fucking bell and all that YouTube jazz, because that's what you need to do these days. Also, follow the other content on the channel, the wonderful Seddon gaming sessions of I Joined a Cult.
Join my cult.
Join the cult. Seddon, Stu even with his Stadia play-alongs, Seddon and his pop videos, and obviously the main event, the granddaddy of them all, the weekly show where you get all of us talking pretty much bollocks for a couple of hours.
Cover everything, didn't we? From movies, TV, gaming, wrestling, sports, comic books, right the way to political theory, badly thought out statements about political theory, and everything in between. There's not a topic I think we haven't tackled yet, although not necessarily tackled them all particularly well. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? You get anywhere between 2 and 4 decades talking about stuff and hoping that at least we get across who we are, and hopefully sometimes we're funny about it, and also hopefully generally we're not so offensive that people go, God, it's 4 Piers Morgans talking about something.
And yeah, it's basically like if you're in the pub on a Friday night.
Yeah, and sometimes there's booze as well. That has integrated into the shows a few times, and sometimes caused some hilarity when we had someone almost go unconscious in one of the shows once because of a mixture of I think it was gin and COVID vaccine, not necessarily in the same glass. He'd just been vaccinated that day, but yeah, I mean, coming onto this show, as you say, this week we wanted to talk about heroes, and I had a soft plan when we clicked record to bang into a beautiful rendition of "You Can Be My Hero, Baby" by I want to say Enrique Iglesias. No, is Enrique the dad? I can't remember which way round it is, but I stopped myself because one, I remembered that I'm an absolutely terrible singer. And 2, I remembered how shit that song is. So I thought, let's not pollute the airways with that any further.
See, if you're going on a song about heroes, it's clearly got to be Till Lindemann doing a cover of the David Bowie song "Heroes" in his native German. Beautiful.
I kind of this is look at this. We've deviated already. I'd have if I'm going to do heroes, if I'd have thought about it. I probably would have gone with Tina Turner. We Don't Need Another Hero, purely because I reckon, as singing voices go, my voice is probably more similar to Tina Turner's than it is any other sort of male singer or anything like that. And it's from a great movie, which obviously is something we love and we love talking about. But yeah, heroes for us. We've been doing this comic book podcast now for 6 weeks before this, and one of the things that we've looked at is the deep dive into Batman, and we've done a few top 5s. But one of the things I think that we said from day one that we find quite interesting is kind of learning a bit about each other as well, learning about our comic book origins and what drives us. And we put this down as an interesting topic because it's so broad. There are so many different archetypes of heroes. There are probably millions of comics at this point, and most of them have a hero at the forefront, and right the way down to anti-heroes, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But I think it does probably say a lot about us as people as to what we want out of our heroes, who we gravitate to, who we don't gravitate to. So it just seemed like a kind of a nice topic for us to maybe talk a bit broader about the comic book world and us, and our lives in there.
So we shall start with, what is it that you actually want in a hero / anti-hero / main protagonist?
Yeah, let's start with an easy question, Lacey? No, I mean, you're right, aren't you? I think that is a really good starting point of going. What is it we are looking for, and I guess a lot will drive from there.
Yeah. So for me, I want them to obviously, in the hero side, definitely be a beacon of good in a usually unjust or evil world, but they should be flawed, they should be human, or at least humanizing enough that you can not necessarily see yourself in them, because as I said, we're not all Batman and Iron Man and multi-billionaires that can just go, fuck it, I'm going to buy this suit and I'm now Iron Man.
Just
That
gonna just gonna go off for 5 years and train myself to be the peak of physical condition.
yeah.
Back soon, and then I'll take out all the criminals. Yeah, I think the person who makes me pay my mortgage every month would get a bit miffed if I just stopped earning cash and trained myself to be the ultimate martial artist on the planet.
Yeah, but there should be a level of humanity in them that you can always connect with. You look at someone like Spider-Man, for argument's sake, who is a geeky teenager. A lot of us were there. We weren't then bit by a radioactive spider and and be able to do that. But also when he's out of the school stuff and he's a bit that older sort of section where he's working, the whole your responsibilities
Yeah,
on both sides and balance and choices and not so much living the double life, but that level of how do you deal with all of these things that you have to deal with because of being a fucking adult? How do you balance that? How do you go through with all that? And yeah, so it doesn't have to be that I literally can see myself in it, because I'm not going to look at Blade and go, I'm a black day walking vampire. Of course I am.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's got to be something.
This is just great effects for me on the screen to make you look. Oh God, that way to make you look like you do here, because yes, you are in fact Blade in real life.
Yeah, but yeah. So, what are you on that? Are
well,
you?
There's a couple of key things that I think you really said there, and the thing that really stands out for me is the point you're making at the moment, is that connection. And there's probably an easy and a quick win, isn't there, for someone who creates a hero? So in most part, we're talking about comic writers and artists, but obviously people do create heroes in other forms. Is trying to find an everyman. And I'm going to use the term everyman, and I'm going to stick with the term everyman, because I think we will pick up on the difference between sort of male superheroes or male heroes and female heroes. Bearing in mind we're two males talking about this, so I think probably there's a lot of heroes that have been created that were designed more for us. And obviously, as the years have gone by, I think there is probably and hopefully, should I say, a lot more out there that would resonate and have that instant connectivity with a female audience now. But yeah, I want to connect with my hero in some way. But you said it very well. It doesn't need to be me though. It is handy and it is easier if it's me. And I think Peter Parker will come up and Spider-Man will come up a few times. But if you were going to do a bit of a kind of a generic idea of, I mean, I was a kid growing up. I was at school. I liked comic books. I liked movies. I liked things like that. Peter Parker should be my everyman and should be where I find those connections. But I like to just, I guess my connectivity has to be, I have to understand the hero, who they are and what they are. I can get that connection by just going, I am not you. Your Blade example is very good. I'm not Blade. I'm not a half vampire. But when I see them portrayed and when I see how they do their heroic acts, I want to go, I feel like if I was them, if I was put in that position, I would react very similarly. That's that level of connectivity that I want, is to go, yes, that would be me, or I can see why they did the things they did. And the other thing that really struck out for me in what you said, which is something that really resonates with me when I think about what I want from a hero is I want them to be just. I want their cause or the things that they are fighting or the ways that they do that. I want to feel like it fits my outlook on life and my moral code, I guess. I mean, you can very easy to sort of say, well, hero beats a bad guy. And that is your kind of cookie cutter way of producing a superhero story. But I don't always feel like they come across quite as just, or their reasoning for it resonates with me. So yeah, the connectivity resonating with me, and I have to feel like the actions that they're doing are the right actions. And if I can jump, because one of the things I wanted to do to probably maybe establish what I want from a hero is to possibly talk about a hero I don't like, because I think that might actually show the other side of the coin, especially as the one I'm going to pick on is probably one of the biggest heroes in media, and I don't like Superman.
Me too.
I was hoping you would be the same. Yeah,
And
I got the feeling you might on this.
Because as I said to you, there's two that I just can't stand.
Yeah,
And they're for the same reason. But I'll let you obviously go into why you.
I mean, we talk about that connectivity thing, which I've said is really important to me. I can't connect to Superman. Superman is a god, effectively. Superman, I'm going to say Superman has no flaws. Like, we'll put kryptonite to one side because it's a bit of a weak flaw. And I say flaws in their powers. We'll get back to maybe if he's got any flaws as a person, but he can beat anyone at any time. And I don't resonate with that, because I go, where's my struggle with my hero? Like, he can do everything so offhand, and I think where I find myself, I think it's very hard to write because of that. But where I find myself struggling with it is I go, well, if I'm looking for my hero to be just, he still lives in a world full of bad things, and I have seen a few issues here and there. But why isn't Superman making the world a better place? Why is he only fighting villains? Why isn't he using this amazing array of powers that he has to solve problems like sort of droughts in Africa and hunger and things like that? And almost because you've made him limitless, I find his heroism false, because he could do so much more. I mean, it's a bad one to go to, but you go to Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, where they touch on nuclear disarmament and the Superman, and you go, not the best source material ever to relate to, but it always just went into my head of going, he could do so much for so many people, and arguably you could say, well, he also has a right to have his own life, and really should he be spending every waking minute of every day fixing everything for everyone? Because human beings are flawed and these bad people will do it again. But yes, it is my answer. If he's going to be the hero that they try to portray him as, then he just doesn't. It just doesn't work for me. And he's such a Boy Scout with it. Like there is no. Or generally, he's shown as no imperfections, and I want him to have some imperfections, because again, he is imperfect by not being imperfect. If that makes sense, like you're almost going. If you say this is the pinnacle of what a being can do, I mean, I go back to he is a god, and sometimes I think he's portrayed as God, and you go, well, the same complaints I guess I'd have with God of going, so why is there still all this shit going on in the world? Like, fix it. But yeah, I really, really struggle with him. Where do your struggles with the greatest superhero of all time come from?
See, my issue is whenever anything happens, why am I invested? Because he is, as the kids would say these days, OP. He literally is the fastest, the strongest, has laser eyes, freeze breath. Anything that happens, he is better than.
Yeah. He's pretty much impervious to everything as well, isn't he? Like, again, putting kryptonite to one side, he's He's impervious to bullets. He can leap tall buildings in a single bound. You know, all of these sort of things. Like he can't be hurt, and that's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. And to go back to obviously the Nightfall show, the thing that got us so much in that was watching Batman's struggle.
Yeah.
It was the fact of, he is a human, he is just a man, and it takes its toll. Whereas
maybe
the hardest thing,
maybe it's sacrifice. You know, like when we read that Nightfall story, Bruce Wayne has to sacrifice pretty much all of himself, of his life, of his body, of his well-being, because he wants to be just and he wants to make that difference. Whereas Superman, if you put him in the Nightfall storyline, Superman could have rocked up and done everything he done in about 3 seconds. Job done, and it's.
And so my other one that is similar to Superman that I just can't stand.
I'm really intrigued in this one because I had a guess.
Marvel. Captain Marvel is basically their version of Superman. She is superpowered, stronger than shit, can beat everything. In theory, could have taken Thanos down on a Hodge.
See, and again, like, I'm glad you clarified, because I presumed you meant the female Captain Marvel from that we now see in the movies and is in the comics, and not like the kind of 1970s Captain Marvel that they had. Really interesting, because you'd mentioned that there was a DC one and a Marvel one, and I did have a feeling that your DC one might be Superman, because I just, from speaking to you on the other shows, I kind of thought, I reckon you might also struggle with the concept of a hero who has no peril and struggle. I really couldn't figure out who your Marvel one was going to be, and I'm quite surprised by Captain Marvel, but pretty much because it just didn't cross my mind, and I actually thought it might be a very different one, which I thought might cause some controversy for anyone watching or listening to this. I guess I don't see it with Captain Marvel. Now, I think you make a really valid point there, because the way they have created her and portrayed her, certainly in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is, as you say, that kind of Superman equivalent. They've showed her to this point of being uber powerful, can take everyone down. And what we've had, like the one movie of her, and she appeared in, it was Endgame, wasn't it?
It was Endgame, yeah.
Yeah. And yes, pretty much kind of rocked in and done what she wants when she wants. It's a tough character to write in. I think for movies and for comic books, it's a real risk putting someone like in, because, as you say, she can take anyone down. So how do you actually create a peril? I mean, a lot of the time it seemed like that you almost have to write her off. You have to give her a reason to not be there. Otherwise, she would just fix everything instantaneously, so you don't see any of that growth with any other characters. One of the reasons why Captain Marvel wouldn't make kind of a dislike list for me, and this is from the comic book side. I love her in the comic books. Now, when I say I love her up until almost maybe about a decade ago in publishing, and there really was a change. There really was a change into making her into, guess, the uber powerful Captain Marvel that you see in the movies. But having said that, even in the comic books, I still like her a lot better, because in the comic books, she has been represented very, very differently and much more rounded. So she is a woman, end of, and she's Captain Marvel. Like when they do her stories in it, she has friends, she has family, she has personal life struggles, she has personal life wins, personal life ends. But with this kind of powerful set of abilities around her, and I think in the comics they do a lot better job of
humanizing her.
Yeah, and maybe like as the comparative point to Superman, whereas Superman is an alien. Superman come from another planet, but obviously grew up on Earth and was taught to how to be a good human, let's say, by his aunt and uncle, wasn't it? Yeah. But I Captain Marvel in the comics is a human. She's rubbish at life sometimes. She's very good at life sometimes. And I think when they tell those stories, you will often, in maybe like every sort of 3 or 4 arcs, you'll get a kind of storyline where she just gets it wrong, because she's flawed, and as I say, that really doesn't come across in the cinematic universe
I was gonna
portrayal.
say, 'cause I'd say this is the bit where I haven't read any Captain Marvel. I've watched obviously the films. I've seen cartoon stuff where she's been in, but all of it's been in the last sort of 10 years. So it is clearly this, Superman equivalent, which they were trying to
Yeah,
push for the MCU versions because that's what they want as a big payoff. So as I said, my knowing of the character is just this female version of basically Superman is how I've seen it because they never in any of the other media that they've used her in, they don't have any of the extra bits. Obviously, they clearly do in
yeah.
the comics. So that's a
Well,
maybe if I actually read it, I might actually not hate it as much. But
but even in the Solo movie, and I guess difference between comics and movies again, that Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've got 2 hours, let's say, to establish her, and they clearly wanted to get her to a point in Endgame. So yeah, maybe you don't kind of see. Now, maybe that's not enough time to give a well-rounded. I mean, I guess the question with that is uh, was she necessary? Because we talk about Superman and whatever my like or dislikes are for Superman, very very popular, and has sort of perpetuated now for enough decades to go. It resonates with enough people.
yeah,
And was there a need for a female Superman equivalent? We talk about finding that audience and connectivity and resonating. And as I say, for many years, comic books were dominated by men. It was a very much a kind of a male hobby, and most of the superheroes were white males for a very long time, and they were American white males, and like maybe that is their push to give a younger female audience their version of Superman. For me, a shame though, because if that is the way they are going to go, I think they're missing a trick. Because I think the character is so much more interesting than that. I mean, go back and I'm trying to remember. Sort of, God, time flies, but for a reasonable period of time in the comic book, she was an alcoholic. She'd come in through the 70s, and I think it was just an iconic image. And at the time in the 70s, this was when we got characters like Blade and things like that. And I think the comic book world was trying to be a lot more progressive. It was trying to introduce heroes that were of different races, different nationalities, different sexes to find that. But
yeah,
I would say initial, she's quite generic. In fact, the fact that she's Captain Marvel, she gets her powers and she pretty much takes over from Captain Marvel, who was a man. And I think, very sort of generic in origin. And kind of just mooched about for a long period of time. In fact, so much so that she had all of her powers stolen from her by Rogue from the X-Men. Getting into a bit of lore now, but they almost kind of wrote her off because I think they liked the Rogue character more and wanted to give her a bigger expanded set of powers. So she stole the powers from her. And then, she was just in the background. Every now and again, she'd show up in a story. And I think it was early 90s, and I think a comic book creator obviously come back and went, do you know what? I like that character. Let's kind of reintroduce. And let's say when they reintroduced her, like over the period of let's say the next sort of 5 years, she just started sort of making mistakes and messing up, and then ultimately it led to this storyline where you found out she was messing up and making mistakes because she'd been drinking on the job, and then she drank more on the job because the mistakes she made, and she kind of spiraled, and then coming into the mid 2000s to 2010s, you get this kind of arc where she comes out of that and becomes this uber powerful big character. So I think it's a shame because I think the main representation of her is really one note. It's this really one note. Here is a female version of Superman. And I can see why you don't like her based off of that if you don't like Superman.
So it's. I think I may now have to obviously look at some of this, the past stuff, because, as I said, it is just that. It is again another one of those for the same reason with Superman is why should I care when in theory they can fuck everyone up.
Yeah.
Where's the peril? Where's the intrigue? Where's the can they do it?
And I love that term. I love that term. Where's the peril? And I know we're kind of, I guess, touching into the villainy world, but going back to what we want out of our heroes is, I want to see that struggle. I want there to be a clear peril. If it's really easy for them, then just do it. And why am I watching it? You know,
Yeah,
like or why am I reading it? I need to see. You know, we talk about like a journey of a character in any story. Well, part of the journey of a hero's character is that kind of meat and potatoes of how do they solve this problem that they are not equipped to solve. Like, how do they have to better themselves, adapt themselves, or push themselves to the limit to do the good thing that we all hope that they do, but is so impossible for them to do. And yeah, Superman just blows all that shit out of the water. And every now and again, like a villain rocking up and going, "Oh, kryptonite! I'll put a kryptonite necklace around your neck." You go, "I don't even
yeah,
feel like peril then." I just go, "Someone can just walk up and take that off of him."
yeah.
Yeah, too powerful, too godlike.
So the obviously that's a lot of them being sort of earthbound, as we'll say, of heroes. I also don't mind when you have the sort of alien-y type ones that can be more powered uh, with a certain thing, but they still have their flaws. So you look at Rocket and Groot in Guardians, same with
Yeah,
Drax, you know, Silver Surfer. There's all these
yeah,
outworld characters, but even with them, they still have some form of flaw or something that makes them have a peril or a
yeah,
it's like if you look at sort of Drax as an example, he will go fucking ape shit, but as soon as you sort of mention his wife and kids, he can break down,
yeah.
and it stops him doing what he was doing, and yeah, that's
It makes him feel inherently human again,
yeah,
even if they don't look human, aren't human, etc., etc. They share that those frailties that we either have or we don't have. But certainly, if we don't have them, we know people in our own life who would react that way. They might
yeah,
not be big green killing machines with knives, thank God, but we can see that. And again, it's that resonating, isn't it? Of one, and believability comes into that. I think
yeah,
like you. I know that there aren't villains and heroes in the world, but I want to feel like if I'm having this story portrayed to me that it is, if it happened in my world, it would happen similarly.
yeah,
And like I think that's a good example with using kind of people off-world aliens, but can even look at it in our own planet. There's people from like cultures, and certainly I think this started to happen again in the comic books around the sort of 70s and onwards. But that actually using the medium and using the hero to show culturally what happens differently, even in other countries. Like um, that they may react differently potentially, but actually at its core, we're all similar.
yeah,
Like the end result they want is the same. They may go about it a slightly different way. And yeah, like think a Martian Manhunter. Like when you said aliens, I was kind of thinking about him, and he was always a really interesting one for me because I mean, he's from Mars,
yeah,
comic book wise, but his kind of whole shtick, or a big part of his power set shtick, is to be able to look like humans. And I think it gets to tell a really interesting story about someone trying to integrate themselves into this human being world. And again, I juxtapose that against Superman, who he's brought up in this world and he looks like us. And I think there's a lovely thing you can do with heroes of going, what if they don't fit the societal norms, but they still want to be a hero? And it's an important message, I think. For I'm doing a long circle to one of the things that I really want out of a hero is I want when a kid picks up a comic book is I want them to learn something, and not just learn that there are good guys and bad guys, but I want them to learn that anyone can be good. And I
yeah,
think so often you get this kind of message ingrained into you from young, depending on what your background is that good might be one thing. And then let's go with the meanest thing in the world it could possibly be, is that the only people who are good are the people in your family, or the people who look just like you. And I think comic books allow, and heroes allow, to be able to tell that story of going, no, anyone and everyone from every walk of life can be a hero. And
Yeah,
actually, everyone in every walk of life can be you, and you can be them. There's not They're not inherently different.
yeah.
They have their differences, but yeah, they still have the same cause, the same pressures. And yeah, I want that in a hero.
It's the one thing I will say that Marvel particularly have done well, especially
Yeah,
recently. Obviously, we had Black Panther back in the day, but they really sort of did in the 90s. They did go more with, especially letting the Image guys do stuff
yeah,
more, uh, sort of having ethnic groups and stuff in comics and be the heroes and be the
yeah.
stories.
That cultural diversity of
Yeah,
we live in a culturally diverse world, so let's reflect that in our comic book world as well.
yeah, and it's like recently, obviously, you've got Ms. Marvel, the Indian descent Muslim woman that is now the big hero, and it's just like, even so much so that she's the main character you start with in the Avengers game. So the amount of people that would have bought that because they've just seen the films, their first thing they see is this character, and it's just like, it's a way of going, right. This is literally, there is someone like you for everyone.
I'm really glad you mentioned Miss Marvel, because it was one of the ones I was going to get to. And again, Marvel fanboy, but um, I I bloody love Miss Marvel. I read. I don't even know what got me to do it, because I wasn't massively buying a lot at the time when it came out.
Hmm.
And do you know what? I tell a lie. I do know what got me to buy it. It was a little bit of a fear factor. I thought, oh, here we go. Is this just someone trying to tick a quota?
Yeah,
So I actually read it out of that curiosity of going, please tell me this isn't someone trying to tick a quota. And I mean, it's quite a few issues published now, but I would say that the first run of this, like the first sort of 25 issues, it's wonderful. And it is absolutely wonderful because it puts me in a world that I am not hugely familiar with. Like,
hmm.
all I know is my limited experience for people I know in my life, and I guess how things are presented in the media. Of course, this is another branch of the media, so it is a bit of representation from that side. But um, one of the cleverest things is she actually deals with a lot of about trying to be homogenized and anglicized, and
Yeah,
that's actually part of the story, because she's a young girl growing up in New Jersey, and she's growing up under, I say, a strict parenting. I mean, the parents are a masterpiece in this. They're
yeah.
so funny, but you
They are
learn,
very of their. They are. I'm trying to say it in a way that they are very of their culture. They are very much. They want to make sure that
yeah,
the
that she's following the tenets of the
following,
religion. Yeah,
yeah, she is following Islam and is very much still doing, as I'd say the word expected, but is encouraged with that religion,
yeah,
yet still being a teenager in
yeah.
America in the modern day.
You get this beautifully well-rounded person, don't you? Because she wants to also follow the tenets of religion. It's not like she's like
Yeah,
anti, but she, as you say, she's a teenager of her day. I mean, uh, to compare her to, let's go back to one of the originals, someone we talked about earlier, the Everyman, Peter Parker. I imagine for such a wide group of people, she is Peter Parker for them.
yeah,
I think she is a modern Peter Parker, and as I say, I think like the audience is wider and broader now. And I think if I was a young person reading comics in the same way as I was supposed to resonate with Peter Parker back then, I think I would. I'd resonate with Kamala Khan, because it's got enough of that, what it's like to be a teen in the world now, but also introduces all these flavors of a life that maybe I don't get to experience day to day. But we talk about that connectivity. I'm not a Muslim. I haven't grown up in a Muslim background. I'm not a teenage girl. I never have been a teenage girl. But I feel such a connection when I read. I mean, she's due to have a TV show come out in the not too distant future, and it's one of those ones where I hope that they get the TV show as well as they did get her in the comic book, because
Yeah.
again, I think it's, one of the beautiful things and one of the reasons why we want heroes is it's a really nice thing. It's nice to teach everyone from kids up to grown-ups about that balance between being good and maybe that having a moral code and a moral compass, um,
And
to,
also,
to so,
it's one of those of just exposing different,
yeah,
because that's the thing. It's like, as I said about earlier, like I'm never going to be Blade. I'm never going to be Luke Cage. I'm never going to, be in the 70s in Harlem.
yeah,
But I can read Luke Cage. I can read early Blade, and through that I can learn.
yeah,
It's same with Ms. Marvel. Like kids today, especially in the world that we're living in at the minute, with stuff that is, there is still that pushing of especially with like stuff in like Afghanistan, that sort of thing, of like this is a religion that is backwards or
yeah,
outdated, that even if like the kids read it and go, actually what I'm hearing is wrong, just like they are just like us.
well, and like you're spot on about maybe teaching kids that as a really good starting point, because I mean we grew up in a different time, but for me, I remember talking at great length to my parents about um, I mean, for me, it was racial, but it was black community, and I
Mm.
grew up like in a time where, God, really are deviating here, where hip hop music, where it was kind of finding a foothold, and that's where I learned a lot of stuff. And yeah, you can say like, what could you really learn from that? Did you learn to be a gangster? No, like I saw a world that I wasn't seeing in my everyday, and maybe some of the stuff that I was hearing coming out of the mouths of the adults around me suddenly, from something that I probably would have assumed was right because the adults around me were saying it, I could then start to question that. And I did start to question it. And I think, yes, like that's what we need to do. It's almost breaking walls and barriers down by just showing it in a factual way, but showing it in such a way that, um, it's heroism. And I think it's a quick win to actually go, all of us can be a hero. Okay, I know I said it earlier, but we might just approach it in a slightly different way. But the core sort of idea of what doing something good is, that rings true
Yeah.
across all kind of cultures. And yeah, I mean, you don't. One of the hard things is after all these years of creating heroes after heroes, and then we know this in media in general. One of the cheap and easy ways to do things is just churn out the same thing over and over again. You know, Unfortunately, if pre the Marvel Cinematic Universe explosion, if you'd have put out a Miss Marvel movie, it would probably have died at the box office. Would have been
Yeah.
really, really lucky to find a significant enough audience. But if you were putting out Spider-Man 20, you're getting to get a big audience, even if it's
Yeah.
turt. Um, but I think you still need to start. You still need to keep creating heroes like this. And this for me is she is the best new character that I know of, or that I feel like in probably since the 70s.
Mm.
And there are a lot of arguments for Deadpool because obviously he's very popular,
Yeah.
but I think as a singular kind of heroic character, I think since the days of Claremont and the giant size X-Men and all this sort of stuff, I think this is the sort of creative zeitgeist of this is the best hero that has come along since. And then there are other good ones. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good characters have been created, but yes, to almost create a new. I'll go back to the Peter Parker. For me, this is the new Peter Parker. This is modern day Peter Parker, and to do it with someone who is predominantly of a different cultural, religious background of most of its audience, and let's be honest, different sex than a lot of its audience as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely genius.
So obviously we've gone mostly there on what we like in true out and out heroes. I am a fan of the anti-hero. You give me a Spawn, you give me a Punisher, Deadpool.
I almost thought, Chris, about going. Do we do anti-heroes are different because I know your love of it, but actually,
Yeah,
I think it does sit hugely snugly in this because I think there's some sort of great comparative points, isn't there, as to
yeah.
I guess how someone becomes an anti-hero and why they still resonate with us in a heroic way.
Because the thing is, with the ones that I like, they are usually they were bad. Something has happened to them that has made them the hero, or at least have a reason to do what it is they're doing. I.e., you look at Punisher. Obviously, he was a bit of an arsehole, but then his family got killed.
Yeah,
There's that flick of the switch of, yeah, he's still a cunt, but he's out for vengeance,
yeah,
and what he's now doing has I wouldn't say, a nicer edge, but at least a bit of more moral compass behind
yeah,
why he wants to murder and kill everyone. The same with obviously Spawn. He becomes a hell demon. So yeah, he is doing satanic evil things, but he's going after bad guys while doing it. It's not he's not taking the souls of small children. He's going after the fucking evil fucks that
yeah,
deserve to die. Deadpool, he's just fucking funny.
yeah, yeah,
He's one of those of it with him because they literally can do anything with him. He's the one, probably the only one of any of the characters in all of like heroes, villains, everyone that can be both, do anything, and always work because he is the comic relief. He in theory should be a sidekick, which
I
is something
feel
else
like
we'll go on in a bit. But he's taken that sidekick role, but made it actually he is the main guy, and it's like every part of every type of character in one with Deadpool.
well, I was going to say, when we said about heroes, I guess with heroes, the truth is the hero is that character maybe we want to be, maybe how we hope we would deal with a situation. The anti-hero is probably the more realistic how we would deal with a bad situation. Deadpool sits somewhere outside of that, and I always think of Deadpool as the cheeky, charming, funny little devil that sits on your shoulder and says, wouldn't it be great if you did this right now, or wouldn't it be funny, or and he's always kind of making you try and push your own personal boundaries that sometimes you might, but also by pushing those personal boundaries sometimes you push way too far and do something really shitty, horrible, nasty, and villainous as well. And yeah, that's kind of how he's, and of course the way that they portray him with him breaking the fourth wall, he's almost doing that. When you are
Yeah,
reading his comics or watching his movies, he's almost speaking to you as an audience member as that little devil on your shoulder and going, yeah, you'd do it this way as well, wouldn't you? Because it wouldn't be funny if you did this, like, and he. I mean, he's a wonderful character, but yeah, the anti-hero. I mean, picking up on the Punisher, I think a really good one to talk to because let's be honest, the Punisher's a mass murderer.
yeah,
The Punisher kills and kills and kills and kills and kills, and I think often in the comic books he really is portrayed as at odds with the heroes. Often in Daredevil and Spider-Man, which is the universes he tends to play in the most, Spider-Man and Daredevil are trying to take him down because ultimately he is a mass murderer. But when I talk about that realism of maybe where our guts would lean us to is, yeah, you kill my wife and children, this is my reaction. I'm not just going to smile and go, yeah, okay, there's a criminal justice system that will help this out.
yeah,
Or Superman, different universe. I know Superman's going to come and fix this because he isn't. And this is someone going, I'm going to take this into my own hands. I never want what I've had to experience for any other human being. So there's still a moral compass there. Just a
yeah,
really kind of off-kilter moral compass, isn't it? And I think there's a part in all of us where you go, who hasn't asked that question and who hasn't been asked that question of going, if your loved one was killed, what would you do? And I think even if you do ultimately answer, I would like, hope that they get caught and things like that. I don't think there's a human being on this planet who doesn't at least have that thought of going, well, I'd hunt them down and I'd fucking kill them.
Yeah.
And then after I've done it once, I'm hunting down all of these bad guys. So yeah, I think it is a nice, a nice long term. It is an interesting way to present heroes is our anti-hero, because I think it gives us that good juxtaposition, and sometimes I think essential, because when you put Spider-Man next to the Punisher, you can see why the Punisher is the Punisher, but it actually makes Spider-Man look even more heroic because he went through a similar tragedy, and you see that he didn't go that route. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a great way of presenting them.
It's that sort of shades of grey of, you can have a Batman, a Spider-Man, someone that's had a massive life-changing thing
Yeah,
that becomes their cause, but they do it upholdingly and nicely and thou shalt not kill.
yeah,
And then you've got the same start point, still doing what is right, in
yeah.
quotations, but not doing it in the most heroic and honourable way, just going out for vengeance.
So I've got an anti-hero question, and this is
Yeah.
one that I'm particularly interested in because I think has a foot in both camps, and I'm interested to see where you land on it. Wolverine, hero or anti-hero?
See, I would say he is an anti hero because the only reason that he is angry and vengeful and wants to fuck everything up is because what was done to him. He only does heroic stuff because he's with the rest of the team that are
Yeah,
heroes.
and I mean, I love X-Men. It's certainly of a period of time. It really strikes out to me of some of my favourite comic books. But Wolverine's always been a tricky one for me because I like Wolverine. But whenever I try and think about why I like him and whether I think he's a good person, I find it quite tricky because yeah, he does have that. He's experimented on very bad things are done to him, but he kind of just indiscriminately kills at this stage. And
Yep.
when I say indiscriminately, he still kills bad guys, but like Punisher. Whether I think it actually makes sense, he has got a cause, isn't he?
He's
He is.
a hit list.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases anti-heroes do, whereas and probably post Wolverine because of how popular he got. I think we saw a bit of this coming in from the '90s and onwards of almost it just being cool to kill the bad guys, and I think that's where I struggle a bit with anti-heroes in comic books, maybe in films slightly different, but is that I don't know. We talk about what makes a hero, and I don't really want my heroes to just go, "Well, you killed bad guys, didn't you?" Um, and Wolverine is a a very tricky example for me because he is in and around, and he does very heroic things, and there is an arguable justification for why he's so against the world. But I find his way of doing it almost villainous because he's very matter of fact about it. He's going,
Yeah.
well, of course you'd kill the bad guys, wouldn't you? Because if you don't kill the bad guys, they come back. Whereas I want, and this is hard because you see in a lot of stories. Because so how many comic book stories, and we'll probably touch on this when we do villains. How many times did the villain come back and do something worse? And you go, well, God, if you'd just taken them out the first time, they wouldn't have
Yep.
done these really bad things. But I don't know. It's too unheroic for me. It's too much of a. Maybe it speaks to my kind of views on the world. You talk about connectivity. I don't want to see villains killed. Now, if you said to me, are there some people and some acts that some people could do where I think people deserve death? Probably, in all honesty, I'd say yes. But too often does he just go, well, pop the claws, because that's what
Yeah.
you're doing it. And you go, come on, they weren't that bad. They were kind of like a D-list villain. They probably would have gone home and just really probably never caused any harm. But yeah, that killing to be cool. And I fear
Yeah.
that often writers, and let's be honest, it's the writers, the writers have written that into Wolverine, whereas with characters like the Punisher, I think less likely to go down that road of going. He's got more of a mission and an intent, whereas Wolverine seems a little bit more wavy for me of going, yeah, killing's cool, isn't it? Or take out the bad guys. And so
Yeah.
I struggle with Wolverine a bit for that.
See, with Punisher, obviously, as I said, he's got his hit list of like the big bosses of who he wants to take down, and anyone that works with them is fair game.
Yeah.
But he won't. He will obviously spare some to get information out of them and things like that. Whereas with Wolverine, it's very much, no, you're against me, so fuck you, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, he'll take out whoever you put in front of him. Whereas the Punisher, well, albeit, you're right, he'll take out the goon who probably at best has done shoplifting at some point. Has just been employed by him, but at least you can see that there is a concept to what he's trying to take down that organisation from bottom to top. Whether you think it's right or not, I feel like there's more of a reason for him to do it.
So obviously we've sort of got on what we like and obviously a little bit of what we don't like on main heroes. What are your stands on sidekicks?
The sidekick that jumps out to me is Robin. And I'll be honest, I struggle to ever think of, and DC were quite big for this, weren't they? DC, and maybe we'll come on to that in a minute about heroes, sort of DC and Marvel, but DC had kind of this sidekick mentality, and Wonder Woman had Wonder Girl, the Flash had Kid Flash, and so on and so forth.
Superboy and Supergirl, and
Aqualad, and all of these things. But
Batgirl.
But I worked on the theory that these all come from Robin. Robin was relatively successful, and of course the '60s TV show was. So they went, well, come on, let's revisit that pile. I don't know, and because most of my judgment of the idea of sidekicks will come from Robin, and Robin in the Batman TV show, and probably Robin back then. I think, like teaching a kid the rights and wrongs. I think if you're a parent reading that, again, you probably go, yeah, that's good. I like the idea. Maybe my kid will understand a bit more when I'm trying to tell them to do or not do something, because I am the Batman to their Robin in this situation. I'm trying to teach them the right way. And of course, like in the Robin story, he tragically loses his parents, so he's sort of taken in. So there's a reason for him to be there. And I think probably, unfortunately, this is coloured by what Batman becomes when it becomes dark and stuff like that. I'm not really keen on the idea of a kid sidekick, because why would you bring a kid sidekick into that world? I'm not a fan, I think I would say, but I think at the time when they were being introduced, I get it more. But I struggle with it as a concept now.
I'm trying to think of anyone that still has them other than. So I wouldn't even say Batman still really has sidekicks as such now, because Nightwing, Robin, and things like that, they're all Red Hood. They've all actually sort of gone on to be fully fledged individual characters that are just Batman's mates that will interchange into which one they want to use for that story.
Yeah.
Where back in the day it was Batman and Robin, whereas obviously Marvel have never really gone with that as a trope. You've always had the teams, so you've had like the Fantastic Four, you've had Avengers, the Guardians, X-Men, so they have like combined.
Strangely, now is probably the closest they've got. We have had probably in the last 15 years, let's say, of publishing this cycle where you're seeing a lot of what I think, rather than sidekicks, people would refer to as legacy heroes. So, you've had a lot of younger versions. Like you had the Young Avengers, a few, very good, by the way. And they were all younger versions of archetype captain. So it was like a Captain America, a younger one of that. A youngest, and some of them are related. Some of them are kids of heroes. Some of them are just people with power sets. but they didn't really do the sidekick thing. You know, they were the young heroes coming, standing out on their own, but maybe using the act of another one. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. It really predominantly is DC and DC of a time, and I guess it's something that they can't acknowledge. But yeah, I do. Maybe when I was a kid, if I was a kid when Robin first was introduced into the comic books, maybe as a seller, I'd go, yeah, not everyone will resonate with grown up Batman. Let's stick a kid in there. A bit like adding Scrappy Doo into Scooby Doo and things like that.
Yeah.
That kind of something. But yeah, generally doesn't sort of stick with me. And yeah, I just have real questions about getting kids and getting them involved in a life of fighting crime. If they choose to, or so be it. But encouraging them into it, no, not for me.
So yeah, it's one of those of. It is very much of a bygone era, as I said, and it seems as very much a DC thing of the child version of the main character. Obviously, the only one not being that is Robin. But obviously, you had Batgirl, you have Superboy, Supergirl, and it just seems that it was an easy trope instead of making new characters.
Yeah.
Let's just do a teenage version of them, but we
Yeah.
can't just backdate the story. Fuck it, new person
Yeah.
as a teenager.
Well, and you know, like in all this stuff, whenever we cover any of these topics, often it will go unsaid, but it'll always be in the back of our head is this is people trying to. The companies are trying to make money. The creators are hopefully trying to create a good story. But yes, so given the choice of paying someone a load of money to sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to flesh out and build a new character that may or may not stick, or going, knock up Batgirl for us, will you? Because we know people like stuff that have Bat at the front. You can see how some of these characters were birthed out of that. And then again, I think then it comes down to, I mean, you said about Nightwing. I mean, especially there was a period of time where I really got into the Teen Titans and seeing some of the latter Nightwing stuff. I'm glad that they did have a sidekick because I think it allows them to tell a great story of going, here is Robin, the boy wonder. And actually, X amount of years later in publication, you can see how that person went from the orphan that he was then to the grown up and the individual that he actually becomes. So yeah, good from that side. But yes, I can't help but keep coming back to going. But let's use Batman as the thing. If I'm Batman, do I in Gotham City now, in the world of jokers that are now, do I take a kid on under me and go, yeah, come out tonight, we're going fighting? Probably shouldn't.
So, as I said, this isn't going to be a list of our favourites or anything like that, but as you can probably tell, what we do like in them and what the sort of are our go-to areas of why we like who we like. One thing that I don't know if it's just a me thing because I had it with wrestling, but the nationalization style.
Good. Glad we're going here.
Does that have an issue for you? Because as a kid, I fucking hated Hulk Hogan waving his American flag. Give me the Ultimate Warrior from Parts Unknown. Weird, fucked up, maybe an alien, who knows. I can get behind him. Mr. America, no. Do you... Obviously, there are always going to be characters from each part of the world. But does it, when it's something like a Captain America, does that fall flat when you're not of that nationality? Or
so Captain America's a good one, because if we'd have been recording podcasts 20 years ago, I'd have said one of my least favorite heroes of all. Like, he would have been in there with Superman for me as one of my least favorites. Luckily for me, I think there's been enough smart writers, enough good writers, and certainly, again, going back to what they've done in the movies, I think they've made Captain America good now. I think he is the man out of time stuff. I think is interesting enough. And
Yeah.
I think he is Captain America, but it's not thrust down your throat quite so much as it was maybe in the comics in the 80s, Hulk Hogan-esque times.
Yeah.
But yeah, you put a flag on anyone, that's it. I'm out. Like, and you have to do a really good job to get me back in. It's a very American thing, and of course, most of the heroes we see were initially published in America, so were very much tied to America. But the same bit of that gets crowds to chant USA at the wrestling. And for faces to be faces in the wrestling just because they say USA or they're from the USA.
Yeah.
I guess I just never had that national pride. And it's not because there isn't a Captain England, there is a Captain Britain. But I think if Captain Britain had been shown in that same way, I wouldn't have resonated with him just because I lived here in the same
Yeah.
way as if there's a Captain Sweden. I think it purely is the I want my characters to be like where they are from. So having an American-based hero isn't a problem, but having it all be about America and almost trying to sell how great that country is.
Yeah.
That's where I get a little bit squirrely, because you don't sell how bad it can be as well.
Yeah.
It feels like false advertising, and it feels cheap. And I'd say in the early publication of Captain America, a lot of the stories I read when I first started getting into comics, he was the pits for me, because I didn't want to cheer for him, and not because I hated America, even if I did, but I didn't want to cheer for someone who was tied to a country and tied to, let's say, a political system. So I always would go in my head of going, well, what if we don't use this much on this podcast, but we do on the Renaissance Men. What if that was Captain Germany in Hitler times?
Yeah.
And every country has the ability for the people that run it to be absolute fuckbags and do some horrendous things. So when you tie someone to a country, I think it's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah. I get it for when it started, because if you think when Captain America was first introduced, it was just pre World War II, and it was perfect. I hate to use the word propaganda, but
I think it's the right word, Chris.
What it is.
Yeah.
To get the country behind taking down an evil.
Yep.
And Nazis are evil, and that was a very much a, this is what we as a nation should be behind, especially for Americans, because it isn't on their doorstep. World War II. So I get its use there. I've read bits from post World War II through to, I think it's like the sort of late 80s, where they really then start to push him being from a different time, and that's when the whole him being trapped in ice for 40 years and being discovered arc starts. And during that time, it is all very much pro-America, anti-Russian, anti-Korea, anti-China, and basically it is America versus the world through Captain America, and look at all these other places that aren't us, aren't they evil? And I've got no time for that.
It almost encourages that xenophobic, horrible side of humans that you can sometimes see, where you go, again, to equate it to something outside of the comic book world, the last England football team, and the kind of zeitgeist that comes up when England are in a tournament and England aren't doing atrociously. And I think so many people, again, love the idea of joining up and going, yes, come on, isn't England great? And you go, no, not because of this. If it is great or isn't great, it's not because of this. You're cheering from a football team, and then all of a sudden you get this national pride, which for me, unfortunately, far too many times I see national pride very, very quickly turn into national country, where it's very very divisive, and it doesn't in any way kind of get that inclusion, which we've touched on with some of the characters we talked about, and what we want out of a hero. And I think that's what we've said quite a lot from this is we want to see bits of the world. So say if America had been a very shy and retiring country and most of the heroes hadn't been created in America,
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see what it's like for an all-American boy. But I want to see what it's like for an all-American boy and all those other parts of him. I don't want it to be, a propaganda machine. And going back to something you said about the who were the bad guys. Unfortunately, I think it was a simpler time of writing, wasn't it? Where you didn't really need to craft or create a villain particularly well. They just needed to be of a certain country descent, and it was whoever was perceived as the bad guy against America and the world at the time. And I think that laziness of writing also, yes, made me buck against heroes like that. Because I'm like, well, why is that person evil? Well, because they're Chinese.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make them evil. And even if you now show me them doing an evil act in it, I'm actually more sympathetic towards them because maybe they're doing that evil act because you pointed at them and said they're evil because they're Chinese. And like the hero almost creating the villain. So
Yeah.
one I really, really struggle with. I mean, the Captain America element of it, of that one specifically, it feels to me like to a large part that is very much played down, certainly in modern publication. Or what I think has become quite interesting with it is I think it's allowed them to brave and more creative writers have told interesting stories about America. So I think now they will do the story as I am the symbol of America I'm supposed to be, and I don't like what America is now. Or I am the symbol of America. That doesn't mean USA, USA. So in latter years, now that I think we've got a much broader idea of the world and we're not so insular, I think it took a lot of flack. Took a lot of flack. There've been some interesting discussions, certainly in the Trump years of America, of Captain America as a comic book being very much used as an anti-Trump vehicle. Good on them, by the way, because everything should be used as an anti-Trump vehicle. But that now, rather than being the personification of what the American dream is, you can use it to try and point at and criticize the American dream and maybe point out where its flaws are, and maybe try and make that American dream better. And we focus a lot on America, but I think that's the truth of it, is that because publication was predominantly through American companies, that most of these flag heroes are America based, aren't they? Go back to Superman. One of the reasons why I really don't like Superman is that he's attached to America and the American flag for a lot of his publication history. He learns his ideals growing up in America, and he becomes an American hero despite being an alien. And you could say there's a powerful story there which says no matter what country you're from, you will be accepted in America and you can become American.
Yeah.
And then I disconnect again because I go, it shouldn't be about me becoming American. It should be about me becoming a good, productive, nice, helpful human being or member of whatever species you are a member of, an alien race. It shouldn't be about, isn't America brilliant? And I can only be brilliant if I show American ideals.
Yeah. So last little bit to go on in Heroes. Obviously, we've done a little bit there with sidekicks as well. Teams.
Bloody love a team.
Is it, as Jim Cornette would say, well done or just lazy booking?
Well done. No, I do. I've always been a sucker for teams. And again, I think you have to be honest on these things. Of sometimes you just naturally gravitate towards something and you can be inclined to maybe give it more credence and say it's better because you like it. I never bad team books, but what I like about teams is, and I'll go back to the X-Men. The original X-Men are quite homogenous and bland in theory. It's four young white American guys, one young white American girl, slightly creepy bald fella who looks after them all. But they do, and it was the 60s, so they do kind of kooky adventures and things like that. And it's when you get to the giant size X-Men where you start introducing someone from Native American descent, like a Russian joins the team, a German joins the team, someone from Africa joins the team. The German looks like a demon. And it starts to kind of open up all of these questions about the world. Now, I will say before I go too much further, going back and reading those giant-sized X-Men, I will say that culturally, they didn't necessarily take as good care of their cultures as probably should have, and it was probably quite lazily written, where they learned a couple of German words and a couple of Russian words, and we'll use them over and over again. But teams, I think, allow you to see a wider amount of reactions to things, and it also, I think, promotes that heroism through, on my own I can't do this, but with you I can, and that teamwork element that again is essential in the world. We are all solo people going through this life, but I like the idea of a group of individuals being able to come together, put aside their shit for the good of all. And teams really do. And we talk about finding that audience. So you've got a team, it allows you to have men, women, people from different race, people from different sexualities, and it's not always as one note a storytelling as I think potentially you can get with a singular character.
Yeah. I am split on teams, because some of them I love and they make sense, and then there's others I'm just like, no. And it's pretty much a split between Marvel and DC on this. Marvel do it wonderfully, with X-Men being, so you got your two types of teams. You've got your teams that are always together.
Yeah.
So your Guardians, your X-Men, your Fantastic Four. But then you've also got the Avengers, which is all these guys all come together because something fucking big is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, get the gang. There's some big shit going on down there. We need all the lads for this one.
Yeah. And they do it so well. Obviously, I've not read like a lot of the really, really old Avengers stuff, but I've read a lot of it, and there's always a reason for them all to come together. There's usually a point where that all of them have tried to do something on their target and gone, can't fucking do this.
Yeah.
So it is a point of they have to combine their powers to do what is needed to take down the big bad. DC, on the other hand, with Justice League, I can't stand it. I don't know whether it's just because I'm not a massive fan of everyone that's in there or what, but to me, Justice League just seems really forced and very much we've got all these characters, that lot over there are doing Avengers, fuck, we need to do it. And it's just we are mimicking because that's what the other lot are doing. And the only interesting bit in Justice League of stuff that I've read is there's always that underlying tone of Batman, Superman.
Yeah.
Do they fucking hate each other? Can they get along? But the rest of the team seem insignificant.
Yeah.
On them.
Funny enough, I was going to say, like, one of the problems I would say lands with the Justice League when it is the main Justice League, when it is like the big seven, is I like that Batman, Superman kind of dichotomy, and probably in most parts, certainly in the modern era, almost having Wonder Woman play the referee. But why do you need any of the others? You got Superman. That's my problem with Justice League. And again, I know this is really rolling back to my problem with Superman, but why do I need any of the rest? Like, just send Superman in. Like, and if he's got to fight 100 people, if he's got to fight, and you have to overly manufacture the story that needs the rest. You almost have to take Superman out, or have a reason why he has to be over there, and and he can only do one singular thing. And I think if you're having to do that much to force the basic part of the story, then it's just not a good story at that point. Just don't do it. Just don't have Superman in it. I liked some Justice League though, and do you know how we are ever adding to the ever expanding list of things to cover?
Yeah.
During the time of publication, there is some good. Grant Morrison does a really good run on Justice League where it is the main heroes, but I think what makes that good is he probably moves away from them as a character piece, and I think he looks at them as as gods, and it's almost like that, like what happens with a pantheon of gods when they are here to solve like the world's problems. But more so, the ones that I really love is at a certain point in publication. I think it was not far after Crisis of Infinite Earths, where DC got a lot more expansive and creative. I think with what they wanted to do is they've been off all the big superheroes, and they have an amazing run of Justice League where it's pretty much just the C to Z-list heroes that are in it, and it's hilarious, it's funny, it's full of character, and yeah, on our list, I'll add that at some point. I think it'd be nice to have a little kind of read of that to see what DC can do with their teams. I think if they allow the creators to be a bit more creative.
See, that I'm interested in because obviously with like all the Justice League stuff, I know I'm not talking about the film because I haven't even watched it and I have no desire to spend 4 hours watching it.
I wish I hadn't watched it. Does that count?
Yeah, but it's the thing of like, so you've got at the most the three of them that will do everything. So Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman will do everything.
Yeah.
We've got Cyborg there, we've got Aquaman there, we've got the Flash there, and Lantern there. And the thing is, those four are good characters in their own right. But when it comes to a team, then what is their purpose?
They're spare parts, aren't they?
Flash may be quick, but isn't Superman the quickest? Cyborg is strong and has tools, so does Batman.
Yeah.
Unless they're going in water, what's Aquaman going to do?
Yeah. The age-old problem with Aquaman as a character, if once you're not near a bit of water, he becomes a lot less handy. Yeah.
And you've then got Lantern, which again is another one where between Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, with what they can do, they can do all of Lantern shit anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like with the Avengers where because the characters that make up the team are so different, and as I said, until obviously Endgame where they chuck in Captain Marvel, no one is god tier fucking can't be stopped. Everyone has a weakness.
Yeah.
They have to come together to do everything. But these non-Big Seven Justice League things, you have to send me some links to stuff because I'll have to look at it.
While we're on teams, and I'm going to crap on my own point instantaneously because I'm going to start off by saying Avengers is my favourite team. I come into comics and Avengers was the first team I saw, and for a lot of I said this I think on our Origins one. A lot of it really wasn't very well written. There wasn't a lot of purpose, much like you're saying about the kind of Justice League. They were just often just thrown together. There was no real reason for them to be there. It struggled along the way, but actually it has hit some real purple patches of creativity and writing, and of course the movies. I think they do it so well. But as much as it was my favourite, that's more because of history. But the teams that I like the most, when we talk about what makes a hero, what makes the best hero teams for me is not these ones, not the ones where they're actually pulled together to take on the big threat. As cool as that can be, I do prefer the ones where they're together all the time. So X-Men, Fantastic Four, Teen Titans in the DC universe, the ones where they feel more like a family. Now, they're not a family, but they become a family. For circumstances, put them in the same room. They decide that they don't hate each other. They stay there, or the villainy that goes on around them does. And over time, you grow with them as a group. Much as I said about my love for a singular hero, I want the connectivity, and I want to know what happens next to them because I suddenly care about them and I want to see how they grow. And they're the teams that I love the most, the ones where I feel like I'm going to grow with them. And then when someone leaves the team, it's actually kind of wrenching. You go, oh no, like that person can't go. Like they've been with me, but by extension with this group that I really like for such a long period of time. And of course, then you get the other side where you can throw a new element into the mix. You bring someone in and you get to learn them. But the teams that I love and the heroic teams that I love are those ones where they're, as I say, a family, or they're there for a reason more so than to stop the bad guy. They stop the bad guy and they stay around. X-Men would always, every kind of, I don't know, 20 issues or so under Claremont, you'd see them having a picnic and playing a game of volleyball. And I'd love that. It was almost the off work moments that made them the most interesting and most compelling for me.
Yeah, so that will do for Heroes.
Oh, before we go, but I want one last thing that I want to pick up on it, and
Okay.
it was something that was in the back of my head, and it was something that you had said in that bit and a couple of the other ones, is Marvel and DC. So we probably will do a bit of a Marvel versus DC in the future, but one of the things that I think was noticeable for me while we talked about this, but has always been noticeable for me, is for a large part of publication history, I think Marvel were better at creating the more well-rounded heroes, those ones with that connectivity, you know, like the Spider-Man, like the Wolverines, all of these. I think they had from almost day one this desire to create us as heroes, whereas I think to a large part, for a long period of time, DC created. I'll go back to gods again, like almost an aspirational thing, like you aren't as good as these people because these people are impeccable and they're not flawed. And I certainly, probably why I become a Marvel boy more than a DC boy was, I think I've told you what hero I want. Marvel made those heroes for me, whereas DC, they didn't make the heroes that I wanted most of the time. Batman being the massive exception.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's why Batman always stuck out so obvious to me of the DC heroes is, yeah, okay, I wasn't a billionaire on a vengeful mission and my parents didn't die in a tragic accident, but Batman was the closest thing they had to an everyman because he was a human being and he was having to fight through ridiculous circumstances using his wit, his skill and his own inner strength, whereas I had no wit, no skill, no inner strength, but at least I had an understanding that there are things I could get. I couldn't get alien godlike powers. So yeah, I think there is a difference between the two companies. And the only reason why I bring it up is I think actually that's changed a lot now. I think somewhere along the line, and it probably was as I said in the 70s, I think Marvel started to see that they needed to provide a more culturally diverse product. P.S. Some of that stuff in the 70s really wasn't culturally diverse. It was actually very offensive, but they were tiptoeing into that world. Whereas I think it was probably getting into the 80s and beyond, where I think DC, rather than necessarily even going the culturally diverse route, I think they really started to see that they needed to make their heroes more relatable. And I think you do see that now. But of course, their big three is Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. Well, only one of them is relatable to me, although I think they're doing massive amounts of work now with the movies and the comics to try and make Wonder Woman more relatable to their female audience. But yeah, I think there's only one relatable on the top end. Whereas, Marvel gave me the X-Men, a group of misfits that struggled with life and struggled with things, and people were mean to them and people were nasty to them. And Spider-Man, he was a geek. That they gave me a cast of characters, a cast of heroes that I could find more in.
Yeah. Is it? Did you say it's very much all of the DC ones are gods?
Yeah.
You've got Superman, an alien god who's super powerful. Wonder Woman, the Queen of Amazonia. A place full of
Green Lantern, the space cop. You know, he's been given an ultimate power ring to be able to police this section of space. Flash, the fastest man alive, who had been a scientist and a really clever guy, and you're going, fucking hell, like
Aquaman, the god of the sea.
Yeah. Where am I? Where's that bit of me in all of these people?
So it is one of those who obviously when we do our versus one, it will come very clear that one side does one better than the other, and the other does the other side better than the other. But that is for another time.
That is teaser on our many shows to come.
Our next episode will be similar to this, but we will be looking at what we like in villains. So, as I said earlier, like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTubey stuff. Comments. What do you like? What is it that draws a hero to you? You know, what is it that you want to see in your protagonists? And even if you are one that just watches the films and stuff, what is it that you want to see in those? Because as I said, we know that a lot of people only know these characters because of the TV and the movies and
Oh,
games.
and also, if you let us know what like you liked in movies and TV and comics, because of a lot of stuff we've done, like we can chuck you some recommendations of stuff that we think might sit in your wheelhouse based off of what you like so far. Especially
Yeah.
if your only experience is the movies, yeah, we might be able to put you onto some things.
So it is that time for me to thank Mr. Seddon. Thank you very much, Mr. Seddon.
Wrong side. Oh God, I got it wrong. Fucking left and right, man. Left and right.
And until next time, and villains, good day, good morrow, and goodbye.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.